Hello everyone, welcome back from Kenya. Welcome to the next episode of SLS. Today we'll be speaking with Dr. Sam Faleye, who is the CEO of SAGLEV, Nigeria's first local manufacturer, or local assembler of EV vehicles. Dr. Faleye is one who is a medical doctor by training, and today he's become an EV doctor. Join us as we speak to Dr. Faleye so that we'll better understand what EV is, what the EV market will be, and his journey from being a medical doctor into an EV doctor. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and don't forget to tune in and listen to Dr. Faleye on the SLS series. Thank you, and do have a great day.
Well, it's very interesting. I'm a doctor, as you know, but that was by accident. In secondary school, I couldn't make up my mind what I wanted to be, either an engineer or a doctor. So the engineering seed has always been there. When I got to the US, I realized that there are areas of medicine that were pretty much engineering. So after I specialized as an internist, I also actually ended up doing a PhD in clinical informatics, which is all the healthcare information technology all the information technology in healthcare. And so that's how I got into tech. Well, I've always been interested in renewables, so I wanted an EV anyway. When I bought the EV, that's when those two lightning rods struck together, and I said, oh my God, I need to do this in the emerging markets. I couldn't do it in the US because I couldn't compete against Tesla or Lucid. And that's how the whole thinking came together, really. And that's where the seed was planted. Of course, when I started adding all the issues of fuel subsidy, I actually came to Nigeria on a US Department of Commerce trade mission to learn more. That's when I started realizing what fuel subsidy was all about. And I said, oh my God, when this fuel subsidy goes away, it is going to be a calamity. Well, eventually, years later, that was the case. So that's really how this whole thing came about. The groundwork was laid years ago from me just having an engineering mind, becoming a doctor, and then going to the US, getting into tech, and now adding tech to the medicine, and then now adding my interest in electric mobility. And that's how it came. Literally, I was a passenger in the bus. The bus was moving. Well, so I'm going to take you back. The training of a physician is very unique. And again, I don't think if I wanted to do this, I would do it any other way. Can you imagine if a patient comes to me and they're sick and I have to go to the operating room with them? I am already planning for every eventual thing because I have to deal with it in the operating room. So the training of a doctor makes you think, I know my staff think I'm crazy, but I'm planning 500 things at the same time. That's just the training of a physician, because I have to deal with everything I find in that patient on the table, whether I like it or not. So from there is where I started learning. When you add that to information technology, I start learning how to gather data, how to apply that data. And that is all that happened. Really, I'm just a passenger in this journey. It's just I was trained that way and these things happen. So back many years, I started figuring out I need to learn more about the economy of Nigeria. That's why when the President Obama came in, I had some relationship with his campaign. They selected some people because the US economy was in trouble. If you remember, the foreclosure crisis, they wanted to open up US opportunities outside. So they created these trade missions to go and get business for the US. They contacted us, and I came to Nigeria then. That's when I started learning about the economy. And then I started putting two and two together from the briefings. I met with over 200 Nigerian companies. So those are unique opportunities. That's when I started figuring out, oh my God, if this fuel subsidy goes away, the economy will crash. That was many years ago. Now, when I started getting involved in the EV ecosystem, I realized that if we want to do this, we have to be ready way before they withdraw the subsidy. So that's when we asked ourselves, well, where is this likely to work out better? So that's why we said we're going to start our first assembly plant actually in Ghana, because when petrol was 180 naira a liter, it was equivalent of over 1,000 naira a liter in Ghana. That's why we started there, because I was actually living in Lagos and working in Accra by then. So at that point, we started modeling. Say, okay, when will it make sense for the average Nigerian to want to buy an electric vehicle? And I'm talking 2022 now. At that point, we modeled it with all the data we were collecting, because at that point as well is when we were already registered in Nigeria as a company, and we had hired a bunch of ride-hailing drivers. When I say hired, we were paying them 2,500 naira a day to collect all their data. That was our first project. We wanted data. So this was data-driven. All of that came from informatics in the US. So like I say, I'm very much a passenger in this bus. So we were paying so many drivers, collecting the data. How much are you paying for petrol? How much are you charging customers? How much is Uber paying you? Bolt. What is your life like? What are you spending on your car to? We have all that data that belongs to us. We collected it. That's how we're able to model that if petrol got to 400 naira a liter, it will make sense for the average Nigerian to want an electric vehicle. It just so turned out that when the new president came and he saw the Nigerian treasury, there was no money. The first speech was that fuel subsidy is gone. It was my actually younger brother who called me, and I was very angry with him because he called me at 2 a.m., woke me up. I said, look, Tunde, why are you waking me up at 2 a.m.? He said, bros, I am in a petrol station and I need you to turn on your FaceTime. He FaceTimed me from a petrol station with him buying petrol at over 550 naira a liter. That is when we said, okay, time to pull the trigger. In fact, our equipment that was going to Ghana was already being shipped from China. We had to call the shipping company and tell them, guess what? All the equipment is going to Lagos. So we had to, because that factory is about a third the size of what we have now, and we just had to pretty much ×3 and ship everything to Lagos. It's actually a very interesting story. Tells you how data, how just thinking ahead helps you. But we knew that we needed to be fast, to be a market leader, to be the first person to do this. That's really literally the story. It's actually, you know, when I talk to my son, my wife, they tell me you need to write a book. I said, who has time for that? But it's literally, you know, that is the story. Okay, so to start with, SAGLEV has never been designed to be in the 2- and 3-wheeler. Never. We knew we wanted legitimate 4-wheeled battery electric vehicles from day one. That's how the company was formed. But what happened was the initial plan was, okay, we're going to go to Africa, but we're going to start in Ghana because the Ghanaians actually were serious about EVs because they were paying almost 8 times what we were paying for petrol. So our thinking was, well, we're going to set up in Ghana, start building that smaller assembly plant, and wait for Nigeria to get ready. And eventually we knew the fuel subsidy would go away because based on the information that we had, we knew that Nigeria was bankrupt. Now, if you look back, there were a series of reports from IMF, World Bank, where the IMF was refusing to forward any more loans to Nigeria, telling them the fuel subsidy has to be withdrawn because they can't be borrowing money and the fuel subsidy is consuming that money and it is going into the pockets of just some certain Nigerians. We were following those things closely, so we knew fuel subsidy was going to go. We just didn't know when. So it was a surprise for us when it went in May or whenever the elected president-elect made that announcement. It was a surprise. It's just that we were already planning that first factory will be Ghana, then we will get ready. At that point, we were already getting all our licenses in Nigeria. So we were already getting NADDC license in Nigeria. Everything is moving along the plan. We received a lot of help from NADDC. It turns out Jelani Aliyu, who was the Director General of NADDC, happens to also be a friend, and he was the designer of the Chevy boat with GM. He gave us a lot of insights, which was helpful. He said, look, this is where Nigeria's automotive industry is going. This is where your head needs to be. So I cannot claim credit that we were just geniuses that knew everything. No, there were people that painted the direction. So all of this green mobility bill, NAIDP, somebody painted where Nigeria's future was going. So we were able to now align. So it's not that some geniuses came from abroad and figured it all out. No, that's not the story. I want to be, So yes, we were able to plug that plan in, but we knew once the president made that announcement, then the clock started. We needed to be the first to do this. Well, we didn't know that even up till today, people would not be doing it, but we said, okay, we needed to do this. So the next step is, where are we going to find an assembly plant? Of course, we looked in Apapa, Isolo, everywhere. It turned out that it would have cost us $200,000 a year just to rent an assembly plant. Reality, right? Reality starts setting in. So what led us to Imota was because, first of all, we needed a minimum of 5,000 square meters. Massive assembly plant. Remember, this was supposed to be 3 to 4 times the size of the one in Ghana. So Nigeria was always planned to be the mothership of the whole enterprise. So now, to get such an assembly plant actually virtually became unaffordable. Luckily, there were some websites that were advertising, so I said, okay, why do we have to be in Lagos? Why can't we look in outskirts of Lagos? So we started looking at Ikorodu, Ekpe, Badagry, Lekki, all those areas. Lekki we actually could not afford, okay? The likes of the development, the free trade areas we tried. That was way above our budget because remember, this was being funded from one doctor's ability in the US. So, we had to be sensible, which is nice. You need to have money. If maybe we had some financiers who said, look, here's $10 million. We might have been just blowing money. So sometimes it's nice not to have massive funding. It makes you think. So what happened was we went online and started searching. Lo and behold, there was this warehouse in Imota that used to be an abandoned beverage that they put out for let. I told my brother who built everything you see here, actually built the assembly plant. I said, look, let us go check this thing out. It was looking, you would not even think about it. I said, look, let's drive there and take a look. So we called them up, got in the car. They said it is near the Lagos rice mill. We were looking for the Lagos rice mill, not knowing it was not even functional. But we finally found it. But something in that place told us, I said, look, this can happen. lo and behold, that's how we got to Immortal. We started talking to them, talking to the landlord, making a deal. We said, look, we can't buy this thing now, but we can buy it later. So we ended up doing a deal where we have, we can buy it, but not now, lease it and buy it later. And that's how that came about. So yeah, that's how an abandoned beverage factory, well, probably 300, 400 million naira later, and we're talking about 400 million 2003 nairas, is different from, okay, so times 6 of that. Yeah, if we were spending that money. So I'm talking about 400 million 2003 nairas is different from 2006 nairas. Different ball game. But that's what happened, and that's the story to that. Another interesting story. But again, I tell you, I am just a passenger in this bus. It is just circumstances and information, be good to people. Again, I always give credit to Jelani Aliyu, fantastic guy. Somebody found him in the US, brought him here. He was the indigenous director of the NADDC. Anywhere I go, I always point out that, please, don't abuse the Nigerian government. Somehow they are doing things, finding people. He was the one that told us, we believe you guys will do this, so we're going to support. Somehow he just had the faith in us. And he said, look, I believe that you guys will do this. So this is the dream. This is the future. He was able to tell us, go and read the NAIDP. I sat down for almost 5 days studying every letter. That is what gave us the vision of how, and we could have gone on a totally wrong, those are the things that gave us the ability. So please don't look at us as some whiz kids from the US and geniuses. Absolutely not. It's just pivotal people. And when people are giving you advice, you need to listen to them. We did listen to him. He knew a lot about it. And somehow he kind of said to himself, these guys are likely to pull this thing off. And that is what created the SAGLEV you're looking at today. We were able to match Nigeria's future to the dream we were building then. And that is why we were able to be ready for Nigeria's future in 10 years' time. It's just that simple. It's not that, we are so smart. No, actually, no, a lot of so that's the story. That's just literally the story. So I'm going to take you back to 2012, 2015, when I really started thinking about this more. Again, I like to look at myself as I'm just a passenger in this bus. This bus is just moving. Having been born in Nigeria, having done my first degree here, it gives you a unique perspective on Nigerian life, African life. When you go to the US, it now gives you that perspective to build on it. That's how come I figured out that this story of renewable energy, climate change in Africa is not about just greenhouse gas emission and climate change. Until you let the man on the street understand how this puts naira and kobo in your pocket. So the climate change story in Nigeria is very much economic. The rest of it is secondary. Now, in the US, I can buy the biggest truck and burn all the diesel. I can afford it. It is the social consciousness that makes me buy an EV. I can afford anything. I'm not trying to save money. In Nigeria, I want to see how does this EV impact my life, impact my business, and cut the cost of transportation for me. That is the point. So that is why I say that the climate change story is economic In Nigeria, and what do I mean by that? A ride-hailing driver here, at least as at 2023 when the fuel subsidy was withdrawn, fast forward to maybe end of last year, people were now paying over 900 to now 1,000 naira per liter of petrol. What it means is that innocent ride-hailing driver using a Toyota Corolla that probably he saved the whole of for years to get is paying 28,000 naira a day just to work as an Uber driver. That guy is now paying 1,350 now. Can you imagine? He's paying almost 36,000 naira a day. Our ride-hailing product for petrol is just 5,000 naira to charge. It's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. These guys want EVs. We have over 160 drivers, as I'm speaking to you, who have signed in writing that just get me financing and I'm picking up that EV. That is remarkable. Now, not only that, this same guy is buying that. He's doing oil change. If he has to ring that engine, 2 million plus. That same guy cannot even maintain. That same guy at the end of the day is not taking more than 5,000 naira home to feed his family. We have a ride-hailing program that can put 100K a week in his pocket. That is what I mean by the story is economic. Do you think that guy knows how much carbon emission is? No. Now, you can tell him after you've given him his EV, my brother, how are you doing with your EV? Business is good. I'm sending my child to school. My wife, I'm able to get some care for my wife. I'm able to treat my mother's diabetes. Then I can tell him, by the way, my brother, do you know that, you remember that the weather has changed. Remember that you don't understand Harmattan anymore. That thing is called climate change. You say, oh, for you? Yes. Then I tell him, did you know that this your electric vehicle is actually helping to reduce the risk of climate change? He can understand it. Then, if you now tell him, by the way, my brother, do you know that when you are cooking, maybe you should look for a solar stove? You can communicate that to him. If he's a leader in church or he's a leader in his community, he can communicate to his pastor or the Ogbuefi or the chief of his village that, sir, please let us convince the market women to start cooking with, because this climate change, okay, what led them there? Economic. Now you can convince the market woman that, do you know that you can even save money using solar cooker? The story is primarily economic. The reason we can do this is because in every level, right from the ride-hailing driver, to the logistics, to the business, to the company, to the Dangotes of this world, we have a product that will save them money at every level. That is why everybody wants an EV today. What is even more dramatic is that Nigeria's economy is not going to move forward until we are able to cut the price of mobility. 250 million souls, you have to move them around for the economy to develop. Well, electric mobility is going to cut the cost of that by 50% minimum. This is major. And this is the thing I was thinking about after those trade missions. That is how SAGLEV, because I said to myself, oh my God, these EVs are going to change the world. And they don't even know this yet in Africa. So you can imagine every day I come to work, it is not work for me. I've been up since 2 a.m. doing meetings. I have the energy because I'm seeing this. It is a thing of joy. I cannot tell you the number of customers who have picked EVs up from us, who are telling us, my brother, my petrol bill is down. I'm traveling on your EREV They come and literally tell us, we have a healthcare business that bought a car here, and their salespeople are not spending. I can tell you their name. I can tell. So my point to you is that when I come to work now, this is what is driving us, because I'm actually seeing that impact live. This is what I live for. Now, did I imagine this when I finished MBBS? I had no idea. I'm just a passenger. The bus was going and I was riding along. Today, I have the energy to do the work I'm doing because I'm seeing these results. And I'm like, oh my God, what I actually, in life, you are not going to have a dream that actually comes true. That is what SAGLEV really is. In fact, it's not up to me anymore. SAGLEV and the customers are now the ones moving, because people are buying EVs and they are what they did not even think was possible. In 2022, people used to tell us EVs will never work in Nigeria because we don't have light. It used to be 3 hours to convince each person. Today, people are coming and saying, I want EV. Please, do you have financing? Okay, so the same thing that happened to solar will happen to EVs. Bottom line is, the problem we have now is not technology, it's not know-how, it's not even how to do the business, it is a financing problem. So, wherever patient financing is, as in not patient for medical, financing that is patient with you, which means it's ready to wait 7, 10 years rather than 90 days. We have to find it. That is where we are now. By the way, you do understand, if you've looked, I mean, you are an economic journalist, there is a lot of interest in Africa financing. Now, FDI, foreign direct investment, has shot up. It's because people are seeing the viability of the African market. At the end of the day, 250 million souls are going to give you minimum amount of business. So it's a financing problem. And that's what we are setting to solve. I can assure you, we are already, this company is finally in a seed round. Investors are interested. That is what is going to unlock that. Because the local Nigerian banks are not necessarily able to do that at an affordable interest rate. But I also sound a sense of warning to the commercial banks that the foreigners are going to come and eat their cake from under their kitchen, because what they don't finance, the foreigners are, and it's already happening. So, but this is the financing issue, and people are on board. There's a lot of foreign direct investment already flowing into Nigeria. We have now a financing product. This is what we pitched to the banks that they did not even understand what we were talking about. Today, we have a bunch of foreign investors who are willing to partner with us to finance. So, a lot of announcements will come. But I will break, because, you're my brother. I'll break some news on your platform. I'm going to announce the financing arm of SAGLEV. Is happening already. So we are going to have our own, I will not tell you the name, but we do have now a financing arm that is going to be significantly funded, and the actual dream is going to go alive so that these poor drivers will actually be able to get their hands on an EV. So the problem is a financing problem at this point. An African boy goes from Lagos to develop Africa's electric mobility story. Africa's electric mobility ecosystem is going to be manufactured. It is not going to be imported. It is going to be manufactured. Thank you very much, Sustainable Stories Africa, and thank you so much for pushing the African sustainable stories.
Hello, everyone. I just finished speaking with Dr. Sam Faleye on this episode of the SLS series. It was such an interesting conversation speaking to a medical doctor who's turned into an EV specialist, an EV doctor. He is Nigeria's first company to assemble EVs in Africa. I'm not talking about tricycles or motorcycles. I'm talking about four-wheelers, cars, jeeps, buses, you just name it. It was such an interesting story listening to him, an interesting session listening to him. Do remember that you can subscribe and watch Dr. Sam Faleye on the SLS series on our YouTube page. As I go and take an end to this, we'll do a spin around in this beautiful EV. Do have a great time watching. Bye.